Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the TV shows, and then I come over here and I react to them. And lately, I have been doing a lot of true crime documentaries over here. So if you like to watch true crime documentaries, come over here and hang out with me, and let's talk about all the newest true crime documentaries that have come out recently. I'm going to watch them, I'm going to take notes, I'm going to react to them, and then we're going to have a conversation about it in the comment section. I love watching true crime documentaries. I love reading true crime books. I love talking about true crime. I am obsessed with anything true crime. And today I want to talk about the newest Sherri Papini documentary that I have found. It's on HBO Max, and it is called Sherri Papini Caught in the Lie. I had previously watched the one before that is called Perfect Wife, The Mysterious Disappearance of Sherri Papini. And apparently there is also an interview that is on YouTube. I have not watched this interview yet. I'm not sure that I'm going to. I've heard that it does Sherri Papini no favors, but I will probably watch it. So I have also watched several other true crime documentaries that I still have to catch up on and react to over here. I have two train wreck documentaries. I have PI Moms, and I just watched last night Storm Area 51, and it's a two-part train wreck documentary that just came out on Netflix. So those will be coming up in the next week. I also watched, what was that show called, Hunting Wives on Netflix. I finished that. I have like 10 shows to cover over here, so, and a lot of it is true crime. All right, so let's talk about the newest. It came out, it's actually not super new. I think it came out like a month or two ago, 2 months ago. The newest Sherri Papini, and the reason why I call her Sherri Papini, because if you have watched the documentaries, when the day that she is found, she goes to this gas station and she gets in the car and she's telling this guy who she is, and he's calling the police, and he's like, I have Sherri Papini, and she's like, Papini, and he's like, Papini. I don't know why that cracks me up. But anyway, if you're somebody that it feels very sympathetic for Sherri Papini, this is probably not the video to watch. I'm just going to tell you that, right? I mean, have your opinions. Have your opinions, but I am not really sure why we are adding minutes on to this woman's 15 minutes of bizarre fame, but I'm here for it. In all honesty, I'm here for it. And what's kind of interesting about this is, for years, my partner and I hosted a true crime book club, and we read about a lot of the big cases. And you know, I would watch the documentaries with it, I would watch the YouTube videos with it and whatever afterwards, and then I was kind of done with it. Like the Murdaugh murders, I'm good unless something brand new comes out about it. I'm good on that one. Like the Chris and Shanann Watts case, like, it's so sad to me that I just, you know, to ever hear anything, I don't really care what that he's possessed by devil and demons, and I don't care. Like, what he did it's so disgusting to me. So a lot of cases, like when I read about them or I watch the documentary, I'm kind of done after this point, or after that point. The Sherri Papini case, in all honesty, I don't know why, but I just keep on coming back for more. In fact, it's interesting that I'm watching these train wreck documentaries, because they should call the documentary for Sherri Papini, they should call it Train Wreck. The true story that's probably not a true story if it comes out of the lips of Sherri Papini, caught in the lie. That's what they should have called it, because it's just absolutely such buffoonery. Now, I did take notes on this one. So the original documentary, like I said, that I watched, was called Perfect Wife, The Mysterious Disappearance of Sherri Papini. It came out in 2024. You can watch it on Hulu and Disney+. Keith and Sherri Papini's seemingly idyllic family life is shattered, and I do think that I did a reaction to this over here, actually. Idyllic family life is shattered when Sherri vanishes from their Northern California neighborhood, triggering a frenzied search that becomes news around the world. So in that documentary and in this documentary, this one is called Caught in the Lie, and I believe it's on HBO Max. This documentary is 4 parts, and people have been asking me to watch this for a very, very long time. In the first documentary, what they talk about is, they talk about the disappearance of Sherri Papini. Sherri Papini. Sherri Papini, I don't even know the dates that she went missing. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so anyway, I mean, it doesn't matter because the story is just so crazy. So she was on a run, and she never picked up her kids from school that day. And so her husband was very, very worried about her. And so then there was this huge search which it found out that she supposedly, these 2 Hispanic women, she said, had abducted her. She was gone for 22 days, and then she just came out of nowhere and was released from being abducted. And when the police questioned her about it, she said that it was 2 Hispanic women that had abducted her, and that's very, very important to the story. And so then it went on and on and on, and then the FBI and the police looked into it, and then it was found out that she was actually with her ex-boyfriend James in Southern California, and that they had been having supposedly an emotional affair, and she had had previous emotional affairs with other people. And so then she was arrested and charged with lying to the FBI, as well as she had been receiving a lot of government money for being a victim of abduction. And so, like, for therapy and EDMR therapy and stuff, so she had to, like, pay back restitution. I think it's something, she says at the end of this documentary how much she had to pay back. But anyway, I mean, she just makes a joke of it. But then it came out, it was about the divorce of her and her ex-husband, Keith. And then it came out these allegations that she was using, like, rubbing alcohol toxically to, like, drug her children, and so that they were just perpetually sick, and taking them to the doctor's appointment. She said there's no truth to those allegations. And then it just goes on and on and on. And then now Keith has, like, sole custody of the kids, and now she's come out with these allegations that Keith is abusive. What's interesting is, if you watch the first documentary and you watch this documentary, that there is a lot of evidentiary proof from Keith's point of view. There's a lot of proof, like, from the police's point of view. There's a lot of proof from the FBI's point of view on this is what happened. Even James's statements have been proven. But Sherri Papini and her parents and her therapist, especially in this one called Caught in the Lie, so she's interviewed in this. It starts with her being interviewed in this one. They all say there's so much more to the story. If you knew the truth behind the scenes, if you knew what Keith was really like, if you knew what really, really happened, then you would know that Sherri was innocent. But then there's no follow-up. They don't ever say what really happened. You're like, and the only thing that her parents, who are pretty defensive of Sherri, say is, they ask her mom, they say, was she kidnapped? And her mom goes, well, she went through a really horrible situation, but no, she wasn't kidnapped. That's the only conclusive thing they say. They don't talk about Keith. They don't talk about the allegations. They say, if you knew the truth, but they don't ever say what the truth is. But we'll get to that in a second. So when I went into this, I was like, okay, you got to take notes on this, because this is a effing shit show. I mean, it is such a shit show. What night did I watch it? I can't even remember what night I watched it. So anyway, like I said, it's 4 episodes long, and it's on HBO Max, and it's called Sherri Papini, Caught in the Lie. Okay, now, often, a lot of documentaries come out, and, like, one will come out on Netflix, and one comes out on Hulu. And the question is, which one is the better one to watch, okay? For example, the Ocean Gate documentary just came out on Netflix. Another one came out on, I think it was, like, Discovery Plus or something like that. Everybody was telling me to watch the Discovery Plus one, that the one on Netflix wasn't as good as the Discovery Plus one. I'm sure that's absolutely true. I'm not that emotionally invested in the Ocean Gate case. I think it's horrible what happened to those people. I wish their families all the best. I'm not that emotionally invested in that case to want to watch 2 documentaries about it. And that's kind of that's just the truth. And that's just kind of the deciding factor for me. But with Sherri Papini from Panera, I started watching this, and honestly, my very first note on it was, that I wrote down, this woman has had her 15 minutes, and it needs to be over, okay? And then later I added, and I put in there, no matter what has happened, no matter what the truth is, she's had her 15 minutes, it just needs to be over. Like, why are we continuing to give this woman airtime? But then I added at the end of it, but I totally enjoyed watching this because she's just such a liar. And it did. So the 2 questions I went into this asking was, number 1, was this documentary needed? And number 2, did it do her any favors? Which at the very end, let me go to my notes. The whole documentary ends with her asking the producer that's interviewing her if they think that this film will do more harm than good. Okay, so back to my original question. Was this documentary needed? Okay, I don't think that this documentary was needed in any way, shape, or form, although it did shed a lot of light on the FBI's investigation into what happened. It was not needed. It didn't, okay, this is what I was going to say. When you have 2 documentaries, does one add more than the other? Okay, with these 2 documentaries, what I would suggest is to watch the original one first, and then go watch this one second. Because This one almost kind of feels like a sequel, like a follow-up to the first one. I think they were done by two production teams, but this one almost feels like a follow-up, okay? So was it needed? No. Was it desired? Oh my God, it was so good. It is so... I mean, she is such a liar. She is such a liar. And they go in, and we'll get to the psychologist in a second. But anyway, and did it do her any favors? No, it did. Did Sherri Papini? I don't know what she thought when she was doing this documentary. I don't know if she thought that she was going to get, I mean, all her family attorneys, which she hires these Yahoo family attorneys that, I mean, the woman's like, she can't even find her vape in her office, let alone her legal papers. And this is who Sherri Papini hired this is my opinion on a public opinion, okay? So in case they want to sue me. But this is my opinion about an attorney in a public documentary. You cannot find your vape, okay? Because you said your dog sleeps on it. Yet Sherri Papini hired you, okay, to defend her against allegations of abuse, and you get in a documentary and talk about how abusive her husband is against one of the most manipulative liars ever, and you have no documentation that you share with the documentary whatsoever, and you're an attorney. Like, that to me is so speculative, and they're like, when you hear Sherri's story, you will believe Sherri, and you will believe that the kids belong with Sherri. And I'm like, what's the story? I'm waiting for the story. They never share the story. And I don't know if it's going to come out that the production team edited all that part out, but I don't know why they would do that. They gave Sherri ample opportunity to share exactly what the truth was, and she just doesn't do it because she can't. Because there's no opposing truth that's going to make her look good whatsoever. So no, it did her absolutely no favors. So I took notes on each episode. The first episode is called Exodus, and that is because when she was abducted, her abductor, the two Hispanic women, which we then later find out that it was actually her ex-boyfriend, James, branded her upper shoulder with the word Exodus. Now, she says that he did it to her unwillingly, okay? Or that she didn't want it done. He says that she told him to do it. Later in the documentary, and that was happening in the first documentary too, but later in the documentary, he's like, she told me to go to the Hobby Lobby and to buy this wood burner, okay? And he's like, I didn't even know how to do it. She's the one that told me to go and buy this wood burner, and I did it with this wood burner. Later, they show her in the craft room, okay? And this is her defense against it. She says, at the time that James and I were talking, they were talking for 3 years, okay? She says, at the time we were talking, it was October. She said, I make everybody's Christmas presents, and I like to get them done by October. At that point, my dad and I'm like, where is this going, sister? Like, you need to get to it. Like, land the plane. She's like, my dad and I were doing these wood burning. They were making Christmas ornaments or something. And so she had this wood burner that her and her dad used to burn wood, like letters and names into it or something. And she goes, I told James that that's what I was doing. No, your conversations that you were having with James were of a very sexual nature. I seriously doubt, and they've never shown the text messages, I seriously doubt that your text messages were about you making Christmas ornaments for presents, okay? But then she says, and that's where James came up with the idea. Like, how would I come up with the idea? Probably because you were the one that was wood burning these ornaments. So it was in your head, oh, this would be a perfect instrument to use to brand somebody because I've been doing it on wood for the last month making Christmas presents. I mean, even there, she implicates herself. So anyway, so she goes, it's called Exodus because of the being branded, okay? This is going to be a long reaction video, baby. I'm telling you right now, I'm just getting into part 1 right now. So it starts with Sherri in this interview, and she does this thing at the beginning of it where she's like, this is my magic wand, because I'm going to do a lot of ridiculous things because there's a lot of ridiculous allegations in there. So I was waiting throughout, because they intersperse her interview throughout the whole documentary. So I was waiting for her to clarify what all these ridiculous things were. But she doesn't really ever say, well, that's ridiculous, or that's a ridiculous allegation. She never really says anything. I mean, that's the only part, and she acts ridiculous in that part. And that's how the whole thing starts off. So then they go into this podcaster that has covered the story for a long time. She's kind of like one of the background voices in episode 1. They go in, they explain the whole story of her missing, which I'm not going to get into the background story. This is just a reaction to the documentary. Oh, I want to say this. I always say this in my videos. This is just a reaction to the documentary. This is not like getting into a lot of the case and things like that. Although I do have a lot of opinions about this. Then she shows up and she says that she was kidnapped by 2 Hispanic women. And I think like, and I said this, I think in my original reaction to the documentary, this is so huge of an allegation in the world that we live in, number one. Number two, okay, when you are talking about so many missing women from marginalized communities that don't ever get any kind of attention for being missing, abducted, or murdered in our country, let alone our world, okay? And Sherri Papini is a blonde, upper middle class woman, okay, that is getting tons, I mean, we're talking international news coverage, and she faked her abduction, okay, and lied to the FBI and blamed it on 2 Hispanic women, which she tries to explain in this documentary, but in the last 2 minutes, I mean, it's literally, if you ever watch The Janks, where he goes in the bathroom, and he's got, I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't seen The Janks, but if you haven't seen The Janks, the part 1, and there's part 1 and part 2. In the last 30 seconds, he goes in the bathroom and he doesn't realize he's still mic'd, and he says something so fucked up. They catch her in the lie about these 2 Hispanic women at the very end, because the whole thing is she's not racist. She goes to prison. The people in prison defend her and say she's not racist. It's like you would have to understand why she did it and all this kind of stuff. Why she supposedly said it was 2 Hispanic women was, I'll just share it now, was because James's mother, James, her ex that supposedly abducted her, because now she switched the story, and the story is her and James weren't doing this together. He abducted her because he didn't want to let her go, okay? James's mother was Hispanic. So if she said it was 2 Hispanic women, and the picture that she gave to the sketch artist in her head was based off of one of the 2 times that she had met James's mother, and she knew that she was a Hispanic woman, then that would lead the police back to James without her having to say it was James because she was afraid for her life. But at the very end of the documentary, the producer says our investigator tracked down James's mother, and she's actually not Hispanic, she's Irish. And Sherri Papini says, well, I met her twice. That's not even the point. That's not even really the point. Well, that is the point. The point is you have blamed it on 2 Hispanic women, okay? So on top of being a liar, lying to the FBI, okay, lying about your ex-husband, lying about your kids, blaming everything on this man, you are also a huge racist, okay? Because you're now blaming it on 2 Hispanic women out there that don't even exist, all right? Which is stereotyping a marginalized community that is under high risk in our country right now. I mean, it's so problematic, and the fact that she takes no responsibility for it whatsoever, except for that I was trying to point it in the direction of my ex. I mean, this woman is unhinged beyond belief. She's like, I don't understand why my husband would want, I wouldn't want my kids around her either. I wouldn't want my dogs around her. I wouldn't want my neighbor around her. She's crazy. Oh my God. I'd be scared for my life around this woman. So anyway, episode 1 goes into her missing, and then her sister-in-law is who kind of defends her a little bit. It's Keith's sister. Keith Papini's, it's his sister. I think her name's Suzanne. She lives with her at one point. So anyway, she's interviewed a lot in this too. So it goes into her being kidnapped, and then the FBI agent comes in. Now, this was a part that wasn't in the first documentary, how involved the FBI was. The FBI is heavily, heavily involved in this case. So it's this retired FBI agent who basically is like, now that I'm retired, I can talk about the case. I loved her. She was fantastic. So she's interviewed a lot. And then she goes in and she talks about like the 3 points to the FBI that were really, really interesting. And the point was like the branding made no sense because the branding doesn't represent anything. Like the word Exodus, it didn't mean anything. Like it didn't point to like gang activity. It didn't point to like any specific thing. The second thing was that she incidentally just happened to show up in time for Thanksgiving. And she's like, for me as an FBI agent, that's a lot of coincidence. And the third thing was that the phone didn't add up because the phone was just kind of like, and they asked her about the phone later, okay? The phone had like, the earpods were kind of like coiled up, and then she had pulled hair out of it, okay? Which apparently she told the police later that she did that because she knew Keith would find her phone, okay? In this documentary, she says she knew all of that because, I mean, it's like when they ask her questions, she has like this like deer in the headlights look, and she's like, oh yeah, because I knew that he had found the phone, so I had to come up with that story. I mean, this woman lies. Like, I mean, it is unbelievable how much she lies. Hold on, I got it out of my notes. Where's it at? Oh, please don't tell me that Sherri Papini. Okay. What she didn't count on, the FBI agent says, is the DNA or the FBI being involved. And so then they make this DNA, like they find DNA on her underwear from a man, but she never mentioned a man, okay? And that's where it starts pointing into who is the man, okay? Then 4 years later, because DNA takes a long time, they identify the DNA and they find that it's James. And that's when they interview James. She continues to lie, and she's actually arrested 5 years after for lying to the FBI. Okay? And that's episode 1. Episode 2, which is called I'm a Liar, starts off with her talking about being a liar. And she's like, haven't you ever lied before? And they're like, but why should we believe you? And she's like, haven't you ever lied before? You've never lied before? Okay, I think there's, lies, like if somebody asks you, do you like my outfit? And they're already changed for the evening and you want them to feel good about themselves. Okay, there's those kind of lies. Then there's lies like I was abducted. It was 2 Hispanic women. I was abusing my children. I mean, those are kind of like, those aren't even lies. Those are, and I'm not saying for 1 second this woman doesn't have mental health issues. I think she has grand mental health issues, okay? Grand mental health issues. And I hope that she gets all the help that she needs. But by this documentary, in the 5 to 10 years that she's been seeing this psychologist, I don't think he's helped her at all, okay? In fact, he defends her like nobody's business. So I don't know what kind of help he's doing for her, but it doesn't seem like a whole lot. In fact, so we're going to get to that in just a second. So then she goes in and talks about her being arrested for faking her abduction and misusing money from the government. And so she's facing 25 years in prison and fines. When she bonded out, Keith wanted nothing to do with her ex-husband anymore, and so she went to go live with his sister, okay? Then she agrees to take this plea. She says that she was kidnapped by her ex and there was no consent. She lied because she was in danger and she was afraid that he would come after her kids, okay? This man that rented a rental car, okay, which can be traced back, rented a car to drive up, to pick her up where she said she would be on the side of the road running, okay? And concocted throwing the phone down the floor and all this kind of stuff, or the ground. And she couldn't tell her husband that she was having an emotional affair. The reason she couldn't tell her husband that she was having an emotional affair with him was because he had made her sign a post-nup agreement after she had had multiple affairs when they first got together, because if she was found of having an affair, she got nothing, probably including the kids, okay? But financially, she got nothing. So she had to continue to lie about having this emotional affair with James, or if she just left or he left her, she would get nothing. So she was lying, not because she was worried about being in danger, but because she was worried that her husband would divorce her and leave her with nothing, is really what she was worried about. Okay. So then she talks about Keith and the post-nup, and she said she left her job and she was just at home. She said he wasn't present at all for her, and so she was forced into having this emotional affair. And she said she had to have this second phone. The second phone comes up a lot in this case about these burner phones, okay? And she had to have this second phone to keep it from Keith, because she had to have this emotional affair because Keith was always working. He was never present. So she was forced in this position basically to have this emotional affair. So she had to have a second phone, a burner phone, to keep the affair from Keith. Because if Keith found out about it, then he would divorce her and she wouldn't get anything because of the post-nup. Or you could have left your husband before you started having the emotional affair because he wasn't present. You could have taken your half of money, because in the state that you lived in, you would have got half, and I think they said it's California or whatever. It's California. You would have got half of all the money if you hadn't been having so you could have left him because he wasn't emotionally present. Like, this is the thing that always kills me about these stories, right? Like, your only option was to have an affair, emotional affair. No, you could have left. You could have said, I'm leaving, okay? You're not present for me. Let's go to marriage counseling. Let's do something. But you're not present for me, okay? But instead, her only option was to have an emotional affair. That's her excuse, okay? It doesn't work for me. But anyway, so then she goes in and she's talking about how she had said it was 2 Hispanic women because James' mom was Hispanic, and she was trying to lead the police to James. But then, like, even the producer's like, well, this doesn't make sense at all, like, what you're saying. And she's like, well, James, like, threatened me, and if James came after me, and then I'd have to tell my husband about the emotional affair. It was so many lies going on. So then they interview her psychologist, and her psychologist totally believes her, and says that she has something called self-defeating personality disorder. And so I looked this up because he continues to refer to this self-defeating personality disorder, which I'd never heard of before. And so, and I'm not an expert, but I am an expert on Googling things. And so I looked it up. Well, when you look up Sherri Papini self-defeating personality disorder, the first thing that comes up is a thread of therapists and psychologists talking about how this man is an embarrassment to their profession. Because actually, self-defeating personality disorder is no longer a diagnosis in the DSM. So it's not even actually a true diagnosis anymore that they use, okay? So he's in a documentary that just came out in 2025 using an excuse, a diagnosis for her that no longer even exists, okay? And it's all based in childhood trauma and these things. And he goes on to blame her parents. He said it all starts in with them. And if it wasn't for their neglect and their cover-up of the sexual trauma that she had, which I feel horrible that this woman experienced that. I don't wish that on anybody, okay? But I know a lot of people in my life, a lot, that have experienced horrific trauma, okay, that have never gone to these lengths. So I don't know, for me, it's not always as simple as an answer as that. I feel horrible for any kind of trauma that she's experienced. I don't also necessarily think it's as cut and dry as an excuse to just say, well, it's because of that, you know? So anyway, so it goes on and he says she doesn't lie anymore most of the time. She's made so much progress. She doesn't lie. This was his exact quote. She doesn't lie anymore most of the time. Okay, clock that. Okay, clock that, baby. So then she plays this tape about Keith wanting her. This is her big moment that nobody's heard of. Okay, which she played in the first documentary as well. They played the first documentary. She plays this tape where Keith takes her in the room to sign this divorce contract. Okay, and what he says to her is that we can get a $150 divorce if she just signs it right now, okay? And that she can still have, she can be around the kids whenever he says you can be around the kids, okay? And he says he doesn't want to do it in a mean way. He wants to do this in a nice way. And she's like, I'm not signing this contract because I'm going to lose everything. He says, this is not going to fare well for you if we go to court. This is the best way for you to do it because he's done with her at this point. She's a liar. She's a manipulator. He says that to her on the tape, okay? He's very calm in the tape. He's not forcing her. She said she feels like she's forced into a position. Well, at this point, she's been a liar. She's lied to the FBI. He has stood by her. He has looked for her. He was the one that called in the FBI. He has no part of this. He called in the FBI. He did these interviews. He did everything that even the FBI was telling him not to do because he was trying to find his wife. So all he's doing is saying, just give me a quick divorce, okay? And then you can see the kids whenever you want to. You can have your half of the money, whatever, okay? I won't even fight you on it. Just walk away. And she doesn't sign the contract. She refuses to sign the contract. She says she chose, because she said, and he said to her that she was a master manipulator, and she said it wasn't true. She just didn't tell him everything that had happened. I'm like, okay, that's kind of manipulative, don't you think? Like, I don't know anybody else that has gone to these lengths to be gone for 22 days and that doesn't, like, I mean, that's pretty, that is master manipulation, I think, you know? So then CPS gets involved because he says to her, if you don't sign this divorce, you're not going to like how it goes down. He's pretty honest with her on the tape. I didn't think the tape made him look bad. I thought the tape made him look honest. He says, if you want to fight this, fight it. It's not going to fare well for you. I mean, he basically says those exact words. She doesn't sign the contract. He calls CPS. He finds out that the kids are being abused by her. And then she says all this stuff about that. CPS gets involved, talk about the fumes of the rubbing alcohol that makes the kids sick. And she says none of the allegations are true, but they don't have any proof of it. The family attorney, nobody ever shows any proof of that whatsoever. She says that the allegations don't even make sense and that he's using her daughter to hurt her, which I think is really unfair for her to, I mean, all these people are like, they brought the kids in. All the people that defend her are like, they should never have brought the kids into the documentary. They should never have done this. She's doing it in this one. She literally says on video in the interview, he's using his daughter. He's using our daughter against me to hurt me, and one day she will realize that. That is such a pointed statement. I mean, that statement alone is so hurtful to your daughter. She has no issue with saying that, because I guess now it's all fair in love and war. This is going to stop in a second. Hold on. So she can say whatever she wants to say about her kids and her husband now because she didn't have any contact with them. Okay, so then it goes into James again, and James denies any of the allegations, and he has not been charged this day. They put it up in this print. At the end of each episode, they put up that James denies all allegations, hasn't been charged this day. At the very end, they go in to interview him, and they talk about this book that Sherri Papini is putting out, and that she's got all these allegations, and he's very calm about it. He's like, well, I guess I'll be calling my attorney, and he can handle it. Like, I have nothing to say about it. He is not bothered about this. Because his story, you know, it's like, anyway. So the third episode is called Multiple Truths. And this episode starts off with her calling the kids. And I remember this from the first documentary because they showed some of these phone calls. She records herself FaceTiming the kids or calling the kids. And at the very end of this one that she shows, she's like, ah! She starts screaming. Sorry. But I had to show you. I had to show you. She starts screaming into the camera. Okay. I mean, it is so like, this woman is, I mean, it is dramatics beyond. She says that her children were stolen from her by her ex-husband. Okay. She said they were never taken by the court, that he filed an order for 100% custody because she was going to prison, and that she has now had limited contact for 2 years. So she says that he stole her kids from her. This is where there's no accountability after all these years. The woman still does not understand what she did, okay? You cannot get her on camera. Forget about the lies. Forget about all this kind of stuff. The woman still wants to blame other people for her wrongdoings, okay? Now, Keith was not present for her. She goes in and she talks about how abusive he was to her, but she doesn't ever get into specifics about how abusive he was to her. She goes in and talks about how James did all this horrible shit to her when he was abducted her, but never gets into specifics about what it was that he did. We don't even know what any of those specifics were. And in fact, the first documentary comes out with more of her allegations than this one did, where she was actually interviewed about Keith, her ex. So she goes in here, okay, so Keith stole her kids because he applied for 100% custody when she was going to prison. Well, that makes total sense to me, because if it was her time to have the kids when she was in prison, her parents would have got the kids. They could have applied for 100% custody. He was protecting his rights as a parent, okay? So what's she going to prison for? She's going to prison for lying to the FBI and misusing funds for being an abduction victim, okay? Well, what did she misuse funds for? Because she was never an abduction victim. What did she lie to the FBI about? About being abducted. Why did she make up that story? Because her husband supposedly wasn't present for her, so she was forced into a position to have an emotional affair. So the reason why she's going to prison is because she lied to the FBI. That's the reason she's going to prison. So she, as far as I'm concerned, she threw away her kids. He didn't steal her kids. Sherri Papini threw away her kids. That's the truth right there, okay? When you watch it, in 2 documentaries, not one, and all the news coverage of it. She didn't have to lie to the FBI. She could have been honest with the police and the FBI from moment one. She could have said, I've been having an affair with this man. I'm afraid that my husband's going to take all my money and I'm going to lose custody of my kids. She could have done that. I'm not saying it would have been pretty for her. I'm saying she could have done that. She chose not to. Not the first time, not the second time. Over 4 years, she continued to stick to the story, okay? Over 4 years. I have tried so hard in watching all of this and covering, and watching everything that's gone down the last couple years to be sympathetic for this woman. But there is not 1 ounce of accountability that she takes in damaging her ex-husband. And maybe he is the most abusive person in the entire world, but then bring us some evidence. This is your time to talk. It's not like you're going to have 5 more documentaries, okay? Come out and share what it is. Come out and talk about how abusive he is. Speak to your kids. Talk about how much you miss them. You know, she doesn't even really get into any of that. I mean, she shows her craft room, you know? So then it goes in, and it's November 2022, and she starts her prison sentence. They interview Sherri's friend in prison. Sherri's talking about prison, how tough prison was for her. And then all the women were mean to her in prison. And then this woman's like, yeah, if you believe, like, you would know if you believed her and all this kind of stuff. And then the Lifetime movie, I mean, it's almost kind of like you can't make this up. So when Sherri's in prison, the Lifetime movie about the story comes up, and the part where she blames on the 2 Hispanic women comes up, and they're out to get blood in prison. Like, they're out for Sherri Papini, okay? And so then she sits down and she tells them all the story about why she did it, which was because she wanted to point the direction of James, and she was scared that James would come after her. So then all the women side with her, and she made some really, really great friends in prison, you know? I think that's fantastic. I think that's good that you lied to these women and they believed you, because you're probably one of the world's biggest liars in the entire world. I'd like to get her on that show Poker Face that I'm watching with Natasha Lyonne, where Natasha Lyonne can spot a liar and calls it bullshit. I'd like to get Natasha Lyonne as Poker Face and Sherri Papini in a room together at the same moment. I just love to hear Natasha Lyonne go, bullshit, 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 bullshit. That's what I would love. Anyway, so then they interview these family attorneys, okay, which it's this gal. And she looks like a jazzercise instructor that can't find her vape, okay? I kind of loved him, in all honesty. I just wouldn't hire him for an attorney, okay? I wouldn't hire him for an attorney. But I loved him. I thought they were real fun, okay? Like, he kind of looked like a porn star from the 70s with like this real cute bow tie on, the dad. And then she just looked like, hey, I'm out for a good time. Margaritas at Chi-Chi's on all night Tuesdays. I mean, she just looked like a fun time girl, okay? But no, I wouldn't hire him for my family attorneys in a divorce. I would not, okay? I think she was trying to channel her best Aaron Brockovich, and I don't know, it wasn't working for me, okay? But I did love them, I will say. I love their personality. I thought they would be a lot of fun to go boating with, to Cocktail Cove, even though I don't drink. But I thought that it would be real fun to go boating with them all day long. I just wouldn't want them as an attorney, okay? I just would not want them as an attorney at all. But I loved them. I thought they were fun, okay? They should try out for that show, PI Moms, because I think they would be real good on that show. But anyway, so they interview it, and the attorney says she did what she had to do for her kids, okay? Then the attorney, this woman, she shares this story, it's real sad, about when she was in Cabo San Lucas years ago, and she was, like, she had this whole situation where she was assaulted and whatever. And I was like, oh, this is interesting to me, because this is what Sherri Papini does, okay? Is, like, with the women in prison. She goes to their most sensitive side, okay? And then she listens to their stories, and then she molds her story. So this attorney feels bad for her because she was assaulted, Sherri was assaulted. It's like, oh, the commonality of the story, right? Like, I'm in a 12-step program. I've been sober for 30 years, okay? There is no greater power than two addicts and alcoholics sharing their story with each other, okay? So when you have two victims of assault or abuse sharing with each other, that's powerful. Sherri knows how to tap into that. Or maybe all the allegations are true. I'm not going to take that away from her, you know? Like, I don't know what happened. But come out with, share a little bit with it. I don't understand it. And I was like, oh, so this is why this woman feels bad for her. And I feel bad that this attorney went through that. I don't wish that on anybody. I'm sorry, if she's watching this, I'm sorry you ever had to live through that. That's horrible that you had to live through that, okay? But I think sometimes when our own personal experiences we're biased and sometimes towards seeing the truth in somebody else. I've been that way 100% before, you know? Then they talk about Keith. She talks about Keith, and the attorney says that he's emotionally abusive. They don't give any proof or evidence. They're talking about this man being emotionally abusive throughout this entire documentary, and they don't give any evidence of it whatsoever. After the abduction, Sherri said she didn't have any control over money and that she had to let him know where she was at any given time. Okay, let's just put this in perspective for a second. You've now found out that your spouse was abducted for 22 days. Wouldn't you want them to let you know where you were all times of the day? I would. I probably wouldn't let them have a whole lot of control over the money either, because if somebody else tried to abduct them and wanted to take money and that was their motive, I wouldn't let them have any control over money. So was it a protective tactic or was it a control tactic? But see, the thing is, from Sherri's point of view, she ain't thinking about an abducted victim anymore, because she never was. She's thinking about a woman that just returned to her house. She wants to go out to lunch with the gals, and she wants to get another burner phone so she can text James some more. She ain't thinking about a victim, okay, because she never was a victim to begin with. There is nothing in this world that convinced me that this woman was abducted and kept in a house for 22 days, okay? There's no way. So then the lawyer says that Keith is so good at manipulating, and she says, watch, he's going to lose custody, and the kids deserve to be with her. I'm like, how much is Sherri Papini paying you people? Because that is a pretty blatant statement. Like, I haven't seen anything as disgusting in a statement to say that this man is more manipulative than Sherri. Sherri has one of the grossest manipulations, misjustices has ever been committed, okay? Lying to the FBI, faking her abduction, didn't care about her kids for those 22 days, did not care about her kids for those 22 days, okay? That alone, I think, should prove why she has, if she cared about her kids that much when she came back, she would have said, for my children, I need to be honest about what happened. My ex, who I was having an emotional affair with, abducted me. If that was her story. She didn't even say that because she was afraid she's going to lose money. Okay? Her kids have never been at the forefront. I have never seen something like that since the Natalia Grace attorney here in town talked about how Natalia Grace, at 4 years old, was responsible for everything that happened to her. This is baffling to me that these attorneys got on here and said this. You have the nerve to call Keith Papini manipulative when your defendant, your client, is one of the most manipulative women that has ever been in any kind of true crime documentary ever to this day. Bizarre. So they interview the parents. The parents say they don't know half the things that We don't know half the things that went through, what happened in the marriage between Sherri and Papini. And I'm like what? Now I watched all 4 parts of the documentary. I'm still waiting for like what, okay? They never said that. Talk about how she moved in with them once she was released. The mom said that no one could believe. She said nobody out there could believe that Sherri orchestrated this on her own. I do. Hey, Mom, I do. I believe that Sherri orchestrated this whole thing, okay? I think she told James what to do. I think she was in control of James. I think this woman is controlling. She's a liar. She don't care about her kids. And she is, I don't know what you diagnosed with that, but it's weirdly, okay? It's weirdly. So, anyway, but then they say that people believe the opinions and lies, but no one knows the real story. What's the real story? I'm still waiting. I watched the whole documentary. What's the real story? Is that part 2? Because there's not going to be a part 2. What's the real story? What's the lies? Can you tell me? I got an email listed underneath. If you want to, just find my email. It's real easy. Or comment on this video. Let us know the story. Let us know the truth about what happened in their marriage. Because you didn't. You had 4 parts in this documentary. You didn't do it. Okay. So anyway, then they go on to talk about how she has a better relationship with her parents now. And I'm like, yeah, because nobody else wants anything to do with her anymore, probably. And she's being forced to have a better relationship with them. And then she goes in and talks about this childhood sexual trauma that she experienced. It was not her mother and father, but it was somebody that she knew, and that her father found out about it. And her dad caught her being abused. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it at all. I understand that. The doctor says her childhood was not good, and she paints it better than it is. He says that it was all abuse and neglect from her parents. And he says the failure of the parents was built by their neglect. And all of this blew up because of the neglect and the abuse of the parents, is what he says. I think the neglect of the parents is what he says. Basically, that they did not pursue or report the abuse when they found out about it. Okay. So then she goes on to say that she's finally ready to tell the truth about James and Keith. And I'm like, woo, baby, good, because we're at the end of the 3rd part, honey. I've been waiting. Is this a Mark Goodyear drop it in the last minute of the Fox Hollow Farms playground of a serial killer? I'm ready, baby. I've been waiting 3 episodes for the truth now, you know? Then she goes in and she talks about the day that she was abducted and that she was going to end things with James, and that's what pissed him off. Okay, that's what pissed James off, to come up with this grand plan and board up the room and brand her and all this kind of stuff. So then she says she dropped her phone, and when she went to pick it up, he drugged her. Then the producer reads the transcript about her telling Keith that she pulled her hair out and placed it on the ground because she knew that he would find it. This is the stunt moment, okay? The producers stunted. They were good, baby. The producers were good. And they said, so which was it? The producer says, she goes, I don't understand. Which is it? Like, were you drugged and you dropped your phone, or did you place your phone down so that Keith could find it? And she goes, well, there's a lot of embellishment around it. I'm like, she is such a liar. She will not come out and tell this. She's like, there's a lot of, what's the word? She goes, embellishment. There's a lot of embellishment around it. I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't even understand. So then the 4th part called It's Complicated. Baby, it sure is. It's so complicated. This is a long video today. I haven't made one over here in almost a week, so I had to do a good one today. Anyway, she's living at her friend's house. She shows her craft room. So pretty, she's doing crafts now. Does she have a job? Will anybody hire this gal? I would not hire her, okay? I would not. I would be so afraid she was going to steal money all the time and things like that. Anyway, she talks about the wood burning tool and how it was October when she was talking to James about the wood burning. So that's how he came up with it, because she was talking about the wood burning, you know? And I'm like, and she's like, and it was his idea. It was all his idea. I was like, or was it yours? Because you're the one that was burning shit with this wood burning. So you said, go get me one of those wood burners at Hobby Lobby. Yeah. And so then they ask her about the full 22 days that she was with James. So she's like, what do you want to know? What do you want to know? And they're like, well, you've never really talked about it before. She's like, well, it's really painful. I don't really know. I'm like, this is your one chance. Like, why are we even doing the interview with you? Like, what's the point of this, right? She talks about him hitting her with a board. And she's like, that's where the first bruise came from. Which, you know, it's always been speculative to me that the first day he hit her with his board, but 22 days later, she still had this bump on her forehead, which I don't believe that would be true, but I could be wrong. She talks about him hitting her with the board and chaining her to the wall. He said they had talked about her needing help. And because she wanted to leave Keith, but she was still in love with Keith. Okay, this is where the story changes yet again, okay? And so James was going to help her by keeping her there until she was over Keith, okay? So he was going to keep her there with the intention of getting her over Keith. Now, I've heard love bombing before, but this is what, love abduction? I'm confusion, okay? So he was keeping there in chains, and where she's like, I'm in love with Keith! And so I'm confusion about it. I just don't understand it. And then he was going to help her, so she didn't need Keith anymore. He said if she earned it, which meant getting her... So then she could only go to the bathroom or eat food if she earned it. And by earning it, what it meant was that she had to get him off. But not sexually, because she didn't want to get pregnant. Which makes no sense when they found his DNA semen in her underwear. But they never addressed that in the documentary. But by getting him off, and he got off on her being in pain, is what she said. Okay, so that's how she got him off. So she would let him beat her, and then I guess he got off that way or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, when he could hurt her, if he could just... She didn't want to have sex because she didn't want to get pregnant. This part was so confusing to me. A lot of it was confusing. She asked, how could she consent to that being chained to the wall? Well, she couldn't, if that were the case and that were all true. But none of that's been found to be true, and she lied to the FBI. And, I mean, at one point they do say, like, what if she's a girl that cried wolf? Well, what is she? I mean, she's lied for years and years and years. She's gone away for more... I mean, they say this at the beginning. They said in this last documentary, she's left, she's lied, she's had affairs. I mean... If all this is true, I feel horrible for this woman that she went through this. I do. I feel absolutely horrible for it. But it's hard to believe when there's no proof, there's no evidence, and her stories they constantly, and it's not like, you know, like my friend Tony Jean always says, you know, a liar is a person that tells the same story the same way every time. A story's gonna get a little bit different, okay? But not like, I dropped my phone when he drugged me, I placed my phone down there and I mean, that is drastically different, okay? And her stories change in this interview. In one sitting down of the interview, her stories constantly change. So then they do this reenactment of her being abducted, and she has this huge trauma response to it. And so they go in there, and the psychologist is saying, they have her like where she was abducted, okay? And she's acting like she's running, and she breaks down and has this trauma response. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. And they were like, the psychologist is like, she had this trauma response because that was the day that she was abducted. Well, when I was like reading this forum that people were talking, these therapists were saying that this guy is not like representative of their field and whatever. One of the things that they said in there that I saw was, or it could be a trauma response to, that was the beginning of like when she got caught. Like that was the day that she decided to forever change her life. So that trauma response, the psychologist cannot clearly say it is defined by her abduction. It could be because that was the day that she decided to change her entire life. That trauma response on reenactment could be related to that. It could be related to a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to just a supposed abduction. So then she does this polygraph test from this guy that has 20 years experience. She says she's not worried about the outcome. She just hopes they get what they need, they want. They ask Sherri's parents if at this point, if they know the truth. They say that Sherri went with him. The mom doesn't remember, she doesn't even remember James's name. That was so bizarre to me that the mom's like, what's his name? And the producer's like, James. Oh yeah, James. Like, they don't even remember the guy's name that your daughter was abducted by. And then the mom says she just needed to get away from Keith, so she went with James. And then they ask her again, but she wasn't kidnapped. Her mom goes, no, she just went with him. She wasn't kidnapped. It wasn't a kidnapping. So the mom confirms that it wasn't a kidnapping. But Sherri's still saying that it was a kidnapping. And Sherri lives with her parents. Okay, then she lived with her parents after she got out. Then her sister-in-law says that she thought it was, that she thinks that Sherri just thought it was a day date and they were going to, you know, like, and that she didn't know she was going to be kidnapped that day. The psychologist said that he thinks that she thought it would just be sex in a motel room and then she would go home. But that she created the lie because she got herself into this for her own self-esteem, which was so confusing to me, I didn't even understand what she was saying. But that doesn't match either because she didn't want to have sex with him when she was with him, number one. Number two, it was an emotional affair, not a physical affair. She makes that clear throughout every interview she's ever done. It was never a sexual affair. So the psychologist that she has now seen for 4 to 5 years is now saying that she thought it was just going to be sex. So even to him, she's apparently lying. And he says in there, he goes, she told me I could say whatever I wanted to say on film. So apparently in these sessions, she's saying, I thought it would just be sex in a motel room. But that doesn't match up with an emotional affair, especially on the day that you're going to break up with this guy. She's now said that that was the day that she was going to cut it off. So she was meeting with him to cut it off. But the psychologist is saying that she thought it was just going to be a day date for sex in a motel and then she was going to go back home. How does that match up, okay? None of it does. Then they have this clinical psychologist that talks about, they keep on interviewing this woman through the whole thing, and how we want perfect victims and virtuous victims. I 100% believe that. I agree with that statement so truly. That in our society, we want perfect victims. That we want victims that don't lie. We want victims that look a certain way and all kind of stuff. That is 100% true, okay? But I think there's some grace to be given to the lack of a perfect victim. And then there's this, okay? And I almost kind of think that Sherri Papini, to a certain degree, is taking advantage of this idea of, I'm not the perfect victim, okay? I mean, she's almost, it's like she's stepping on other women out there that have truly gone through these experiences. She's stepping on their experiences by making it her own. I mean, it's grotesque, in all honesty, and how I feel about it. And then this clinical psychologist says the only reality each of us has is our own. And even when someone's lies because their own version of their own, I'm like, what are you even talking about? It doesn't even make sense. Like, no, that I don't know what you're even saying right now. So then the polygraph tests come back. She passes the first test. And then he says he's really sorry this happened to her. On the second test, about her planning to go to Southern California, she fails this test. So then she comes up with all these excuses for why she fails it. James passed his polygraph test too. So then they ask the polygraph guy why she passed it, and no, the FBI agent, and she says something about, because, oh no, they asked Sherri why James passed it, and she goes, because he's a sociopath, that's why he passed the test. She goes, did he have any mental health tests? I had all kinds of mental health tests. I'm like, girl, I don't know that I'd be throwing out a bunch of sociopaths right now. I don't know that if I were Sherri Panini, Panera, I would get in a video and be throwing out a bunch of psychopaths at people. I'm just saying. But anyway, so then the FBI agent says James gave one story that could be corroborated, and she told multiple stories over 4 years that still can't be corroborated. He says she could have just said she was having marital problems, and she never could say that. And her defense against that is because her husband would leave her. But she never had to have the affair, okay? She never had to have the affair. She could have left her husband and got half the money. Then they talk about this idea of what if she's a girl that cried wolf. But her credibility, they say, is so bad. And then they talk about this idea of about it being two women. And she said that she agreed not to rat him out so that she could get free from James. She says she wishes she would never have said it was James. This is the only thing she ever takes accountability for. None of this, and I'm like, at this point, it's weird to me that none of these therapists that she's seen, EDMR therapists, none of these, and I know what EDMR is, none of these therapists that she's seen through the years, none of them suggested to her that maybe she tell the truth. That maybe a suggestion would be telling the truth. Like, and this is after all these years when the therapist says she almost most likely sometimes tells the truth. And that this documentary, he would say to her to prepare her for this documentary, is this is your last and final time to get the truth out there. And she still can't get her story straight. Like, okay, I don't know. Probably not good marketing. Anyway, so, and I'm like, she says there was no hoax. It was a cover-up. She just wanted to go home. Well, I totally understand that, but why wouldn't you have said that 2 or 3 years ago? I don't get it. Like, even the last documentary, she was still holding to that. You know? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The polygraph expert says she could still be a victim, but that she's not truthful still. He said she's her own worst enemy, and she's still lying. So then at the very end, they show this back, where he says, the polygraph expert says, she's still not being truthful still. To this day, she's still not being truthful. He shows it back to her. And they show it back to her, and she says, well, there's a lot of gray area. It's not all black and white. She had impossible odds and impossible choices, she says. She said she lied to be with her children. And then she looks at the camera and she goes, I mean, how truthful are you? She goes, I've seen members of this cast or members of this team lie every single day. She goes on and on. She's like, I challenge anyone watching this. Have you lied? And she says, I've seen everyone on this crew do it. And the producer's like, okay. But lie to this extreme? Sherri, like, you would agree that the people that you've witnessed have lied to these extremes? She probably would say yes. Then they say that they hired an investigator to track down James's mother and that she's not Hispanic. She's Irish. You can see, I mean, she's like this. And she comes up with a lie, like, so quick, okay? She says, I met her twice. She goes, anyway, it has very little to do with his mother, and it was a way to get him to look at his identity without giving his identity. Except his identity was not Hispanic. She's Irish, not Hispanic. So wouldn't it have been made more sense if you would have said it was 2 Irish women, or just 2 women, 2 white women, that abducted you? So it was a racist, there was racist motive, okay? That you wanted to, like, I mean, the idea that James is not Hispanic whatsoever, and she pointed the direction at 2 Hispanic women, okay, is so pushing it away from James that it takes away the excuse that she was trying to point it back to James, which even implicates her further and even makes her look more of a liar than she already looks. Then the private investigator goes to interview James, tells him that he's coming out. She's coming out with this book with all these allegations. James says he'll just contact his lawyer, and in the end, it comes down to his version against hers. She says, then Sherri at the end of it goes, "What more do you need?" She says her only chance is if he comes out and he admits what he does, and then he's never going to do that. So she's like, basically, I'm fucked. Then she looks at the producer and she says, "Do you think this film will do me more good than harm, or more harm than good?" I'm like, yeah, Sherri, 100%. And don't forget your panini. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this documentary. Oh my God, it was such a shit show. It was such a shit show. And it was based on a true story. Let me know what this woman, okay, Montel Williams, 1996 or something like that. Okay, I don't know what year. No, it wasn't that. But anyway, I mean, seeing Sylvia Brown, the psychic who I adored, just lie, lie, lie. I have not seen a liar since then. I mean, Sherri Papini is the world. If you're going to do another documentary, you need to call it Sherri Papini Panini from Panera, the world's biggest liar. Anyway, let me know if you watch this. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.